Hey everyone, today I'm taking a look at Caesar Seize Rome in 20 minutes. This is a strictly two-player area control game designed by Paolo Mori. This one, you guessed it, takes 20 minutes to play. So Caesar is almost a sequel, or at least a sister game, to another game designed by Paolo Mori called Blitzkrieg, and there's a lot of shared DNA between the two, but there are also some pretty distinct differences. So the game is going to look like this when it's set up, where one player is going to take control of Pompey and have all these blue tokens, and the other player is going to be Caesar himself, the red player, and take control of all these tokens. You've got this map here of Italy and the surrounding areas, and you've also got these little tokens randomly spread out amongst the board in all these different areas. And these are going to be a quite nice boon if you manage to capture those tokens. Now, the idea of this game, or the winning objective, is to try and be the first player to place all of your tokens on the board before your opponent does. And if you do that, you will be the winner. So you're going to do that in quite a simple fashion, where at any time you're going to have two tokens, at least in this game mode, which you're going to have secretly hidden behind your screen here. And each player is going to have their own screen and their own bag containing a bunch of other tokens, and these have been drawn out randomly. Now you can see here that on these tokens they are split in half, and on each of these halves you've got a number, which is going to be the influence you have in a region. And also you've got different kind of unit types. You've got the kind of land units here with the swords on, you've got these shield units which have to go on these shield areas, and you've got these boat units as well, or these sea units, which of course have to be deployed on these sea areas. A turn on this game really couldn't be more simple, where you're just going to select one of your available tokens, you're going to deploy it somewhere on the board where it is a legal placement. So as I said, this is a land unit, so it'll have to go on one of these sword logos here. So let's just say, without thinking too much about what I'm doing, I place this one like this. Now you can see here that I now have an influence of 5 in this region and only have an influence of 1 in this region. So a lot of the times you have to be wary about what you're deploying, and sometimes you have to sacrifice one thing in order to boost your influence in another region. If you place a token and none of these regions have been complete by doing so, then you are simply going to replenish your hand of tokens back up to 2, get it in the basic mode from your bag here, and then be ready to pass on to the next player. But you can also see that some of these tokens have these little reefs here, which are wild and can be deployed anywhere on the board. So more often than not, you're going to be simply placing a token on the board and then replenishing. However, if somebody places a token on the board like so, and it completes one of these regions, i.e. all these spots surrounding it on the border have been filled up, you're going to calculate who has the majority in that particular zone. So you can see here the blue player has a total strength of 9 compared to the red player that only has 2. Now, regardless of who's got the maximum strength, whoever placed the last token, i.e. the blue player in this example, is going to take this token, which we'll talk about very shortly. But then whoever has the majority, again the blue again, is going to take one of their tokens and place it in that region to show that it is now theirs and closer to completing their objective to deploy all of their discs on the board. Also, if you ever complete a region by placing a token and you've also got a control of an adjacent region like the blue player has here, not only are you going to get to deploy a token as usual, but you'll also place an additional token for having an adjacency bonus. So in this example, the blue player controls Africa and Serene, so therefore they can place another token on there, giving that extra importance to control adjacent regions. There's also added importance to control Italy, because not only does this have a lot of symbols around it, but also when you win Italy, by again having the biggest influence in that region, you get to deploy an additional token. So you actually put 2 down, and that can even be increased by having an adjacent region to potentially put 3 tokens down with a single deployment. So once a deployment has been made and the victor, if any, has been determined, then whoever put that last token down is going to get to resolve the ability of the bonus token. So let's talk about what all these different tokens actually do and why they're all so important to have. So the scroll one here basically means that you can take a new turn immediately after this one, and that means that, you know, if you play that token yourself, then you get turns back to back, which is very nice to have. You've also got the Senate tiles here, which are very important to claim, because as you acquire these throughout the game, you're going to add them to your little board here, And basically what that means, if any future Senate tiles are claimed, or including the one you've just taken, you actually get to deploy an additional token for each one you get. So you're almost building a little engine there to get rid of your tokens faster and faster. So again, very much worth having and will help you drastically in winning the game. The little vase here, or the jug, is going to mean that you actually get to increase your hand size of tokens by 1. So you've got more flexibility to deploy what you want to deploy and more options. You've got the crossed spears here like this, which actually lets you flip over an opponent's already deployed token. So let's say the blue player claimed this one. They might be able to flip this red token over, basically nullifying that token and making it useless for that future calculation of that area. And you've also got these 2 other tokens, which are kind of considered kind of bonus add-ons or mini expansions, but to be honest, they are very easy to understand. You can play them straight from the get-go. So let's talk about what they do very briefly. So you've got the poison here, which basically lets you diminish your opponent's hand size by 1. So it's going to basically limit the options that your opponent has. But additionally, if you ever play enough poison tokens to reduce the hand size to 0, then you automatically win. However, the setup slightly changes when you play with the poison to increase your hand size to 3 rather than the usual 2. And the Centurion ones here basically means that when you take one of these tokens, you get to choose one of these bonus tokens, which are set aside at the start of the game, and they're very powerful to give you kind of an ace in your pocket to bring out when you want to use, such as having this wild 3/3, the shield 4/4, again very strong on both ends of the scale there, or even this really powerful 7/0 land token. And something I didn't mention, that if both players tie for a region, then nobody gets to deploy one of their control markers. However, as usual, the person who played the last token will get the bonus marker to use as they wish. And that is essentially how to play Caesar. You're going to keep taking turns, deploying tokens on the board and resolving any areas and taking the bonus tokens and then drawing back up to your hand limit. And that's going to play accordingly until somebody has placed all their tokens on the board and be declared the victor. Okay, so let's start the review on Caesar. So following on from Blitzkrieg, I have to say that I'm very impressed with the way that Paolo Mori is taking an ultra rigid and, to be honest, completely dry game on the face of it and somehow managed to make it a very fun experience. And I think a big part of that is the way that he's limited your options by only having a very small hand size, making each decision in the game feel very important, because you do not want to waste a single deployment on the board here. And if you do, it can cost you quite dearly, and knowing how to pace yourself and to deploy these on the board is so important. And all the kind of extra layers here of flavour are so much fun, again, on a very solid, but again, dry kind of surface game. You know, these tokens are such an important part of the game, and the way they are used is just great, because you want every single token on the board here because they are all massively useful. These Senate ones are going to help you shed tokens ultra quickly if you manage to invest in them and win a lot of those regions. Getting back-to-back turns is always going to be important and never going to be a disadvantage. But even these cross spears ones, I've always found these extremely useful, because if your opponent starts committing to a region that you have your eye on and you're just holding back, not wanting to finish the region, then you can whip out one of those tokens, or get the right time to claim one of them and completely nullify a token which could have been a pretty strong token to start with, and basically waste their whole action for doing so. To add more to the benefits of the tokens, I love the kind of mix between long-term and short-term bonuses. Are you going to, maybe play one of these poison tokens if you add them into the game, which I would suggest that you do. You're going to slowly hurt your opponent and maybe win a war of attrition by limiting their options, or even, increasing your hand size by claiming one of the vase tokens is going to be great, just to, give you that edge and flexibility to deploy where you want. Or are you going to go for an instant quick gain, by again nullifying one of your opponent's tokens or getting a bonus action? Again, weighing up the strengths and bonuses at the right time is so important, and every single one of these tokens is vital to have at the right time. The dual token system, I think, is absolutely genius and as streamlined and elegant as you can imagine. With a single deployment here, just draw a token, put it on the board. You've actually influenced 2 different parts of the map here, and weighing up when you want to do that and how you want to invest in each region is so important. Even sometimes you might just not want to waste any effort into investing in a region that you know you're not going to win. But the fact that the game does a great job of inviting you to complete regions and not just neglect it and leave your opponents to do so is great, because that means that you are going to get the bonus token in the first place. So you actually still have the desire to complete regions that you have no intention of actually winning. So it makes the game feel like you will always have your hand in all the different pies and all the different things that the game has to offer, and you're not just focusing on doing your own thing. But at the same time, that has an extra wrinkle to the game where if you know your opponent is going to completely win a region, you're going to leave them to claim it by wasting all their tokens rather than wanting you to completing it yourself and speeding up the process for them. I also think that this rule of being able to deploy an additional scoring token when you score an adjacent region is so important and such a big benefit to the game, and makes things seem so much more tense, because basically it means that every single region is important and you can't neglect ones even if you're not terribly interested in the bonus token. Yeah, you want to win it to get your token down, but more importantly, you want to win it to stop your opponent from keep spamming their tokens down and beating you to the, to the final scoring condition. So I love the way that works, especially when paired with the Senate, because again, it has that forward momentum where the more you start to tailor your strategy into getting your tokens down quicker, that can really start to snowball and run away with things. So I do think that this game is full of important decisions from start to finish. A 20-minute game offering this much decision space and consequences to your actions is highly, highly impressive. Now, that kind of leads into my next thoughts here, and that is just how blown away I am with how streamlined this game is. This is bare bones. I talk about streamlined games being a big thing very often in my content, and I think this one might be one of the strongest examples of how to give a full area majority or a controlled experience in as simplistic terms as you could possibly imagine. Simply draw a token from your bag or from the previous round, deploy them on the board, resolve the region if you need be, and then draw back up. So how much more simple can you get mechanically? But again, these extra wrinkles of the tokens, the limitations of where you can deploy them, what you have in your hand at that time, just all those little things which are so easy to explain and remember, and to be completely intuitive is just remarkably well done, basically. I cannot fault the way this game is designed. And even if this isn't your style of game, then I think you can't even knock how well this is implemented, and it just truly is a great feat of design here. The tagline for this game is "Seize Rome in 20 minutes, and that is extremely accurate. Now, I've not had a game of this yet that has gone beyond 20 minutes, and considering how rich the gameplay is here, that is another string to this game's bow. I cannot really fault how long this game takes. There's a lot of great games out there that offer a rich experience in a short time frame, and this one is amongst the best of them for sure. I also feel that the replayability for this game is very high. Not only because the board is going to change each time with each layout, and obviously the tactical elements to the game, as in what you have in your hand at any time, you're always reacting to what you have, but this is one of those games that is going to reward you to play it again and again and again, and you're going to start to raise each other's game if you play this with the same person. Because this is the kind of game where the first time you play it, you just kind of go through the motions, see what happens, and try to understand the game. But on the face level, it's so simple that you don't really think there's much there to it. But then you start to understand if people start to play things in the right order, claiming regions at the right time, claiming the right tokens at the right time. Then you start to understand the wrinkles to this game and see how deep it actually is in its actions and the way it plays out. So yeah, this is certainly a game that's going to stand the test of time. It's going to be a game where it almost feels like evergreen in the way it plays, because again, especially if you play with that same person again and again and again, it's going to start to create a bit of a meta game really, because there is so much to explore here, a lot of nuance. Needless to be said, player interaction is a huge part of this game. Area majorities, that's what all those style of games are all about. And to be honest, there's not many, maybe a handful of games or area control, area majority games that work well with two players. And the fact that this game has been deliberately designed for two players is just a whole new niche to itself, really. I can't think of any other area majority games that are, specifically designed for two players. And for me, this is almost like the pinnacle of design I could imagine for this style of game. there's certainly room for me to be, to have my mind changed on that. But I think this game has done as much for area majority for 2 players as a game like Seven Wonders Duel, which is another colossal hit, brilliantly executed 2-player game. So yeah, this game's done as much for area majority as that game did for drafting, being a brilliant example of a 2-player implementation of that style of game. Aesthetically, the game does have a minimalistic feel to it, but I don't dislike that whatsoever. All the regions are very clear to differentiate from each other. It was nice that they're not color-coded or anything, because I'm severely colorblind, and when I have nice thick black lines like this, it's very nice and very user-friendly for someone like me. All the symbology is crystal clear. You can clearly differentiate all the different bonus tiles, even like the numbers and the symbols on the tokens are very easy to differentiate from one another. The board quality is fine. The token quality, again, is fine. It's more than adequate. And it's nice that you get these little kind of custom bags here for the game to draw your tokens from. So I've got no real issue at all with the production. Maybe a little bit costly for what it is in terms of its actual materials. But again, that's a nitpick, and I've got no real problems at all with the way the game looks, the way the game feels, or its quality in general. Okay, so let's go into some final thoughts for Caesar. So needless to say, from the amount of gushing I was doing over the design in my review there, I think this game is utterly fantastic. Now, I instantly just clicked with this game. I thought, you know what, this is a fantastic piece of game design. Now, the more I get into the hobby, the more hundreds and hundreds of games I play, I start to appreciate boiled down systems that offer a rich amount of gameplay, and this again is right up there with the best example of that. And this is kind of an untapped part of gaming. 2-player area majority games. This is something that isn't really explored, because you always assume that you need a 3rd, 4th player just to mix things up and to add that wild card into the game. But this somehow manages to take a very dry and abstract feeling game and just make it spicy, make it competitive, make it fun. This is a very competitive game, a very tense game, but it still manages to leave an impression of feeling fun, feeling satisfying, feeling rewarding when you manage to pull things off that you meant to. Every single region is competitive, every single placement has a consequence, and it's just such a brilliantly put together game. And I think Paolo Mori has found this lovely niche of these kind of bag drawing games that adds a little wild card to the game, adds a little bit of randomness, but not too much where it feels like the game is playing you and you're not playing the game. So yeah, honestly, if you like Blitzkrieg, I'm pretty confident you'll love this one. And if you were lukewarm on Blitzkrieg, as I was, I thought it was a good game, but I didn't love it because I thought it was a little bit too back and forth, as in going up the track, down the track, up the track, down the track. This one means that every single placement, once it's on the board, is locked in. You have to suffer the consequences of what you've done. And sometimes you're going to go gung-ho for the tokens. Sometimes you're going to go all in for a certain region. You've got to be careful about deploying things too early because people can flip them over. I honestly, just layers and layers of strategy in this game. And I think it's an excellent, excellent design and probably one of the best 2-player games of modern memory, and I highly recommend it if you're a fan of area majority games and you do not have to play a suboptimal game if you want a area control game for 2 players. This one is bespoke for that style of gameplay, and needless to say, this one is going to get my shield of quality. I think this game is a triumph. That is Caesar, Seize Rome in 20 minutes.